If you are a government employee and you're making that decision on whether to retire or resign, and one of the things that you're afraid about losing is cap leave, this video is perfect for you. I'm going into the details, the behind the scenes information on exactly how cap leave works and what takes place from a tax perspective. So you'll get all the insights here. Now, I'm Devanaika, and I help government employees make one of the most important financial decisions, which is whether they should retire or resign from GEPF. Now, let's get started with the secret that I want to share with you today. First off, I want to pull up a member statement so that we have some perspective, right? It's easier for you to follow what I'm sharing with you if you get to see some of the figures. And you can see from this particular member statement, the member, if this particular member had to retire, you can see there's an income here of 28,386 rands. There's a lump sum gratuity, 1.2 million. And notice the resignation value at the bottom sits at 5.1 million. Now, this member is wanting to make that decision again on whether to retire or resign. And the member has 121 days of cap leave, which in my example, I'm saying amounts to 178,000. Now, you can do the same calculation for yourself, just following the structure that I'm providing you in this video. You can pause the video and watch it again and put in your figures. It's going to be easy for you, and all the calculations for this video is going to be done. Good, so it's 121 days cap leave and that's 178,000. Now, I'm using an example with the member salary here being 350,000. So I'll pull that up onto the iPad. This is the salary, and that is 350,000. So the first thing that you want to do is make a note of your current salary, right? So, you know, what's your total package working out to? And then I want to note what the cap leave works out to, right? So here is cap leave. Now, what you want to pay attention to is you, at this point in time, might believe that the cap leave, when you see it 178,000, you're getting all of that paid, right? But it's not actually the case. What takes place is SAR steps in here. And when they step in, they're looking from a tax perspective, right? So how much of the cap leave is going to come to you and how much is going to go to them. So this money is going to be split. You'll have a portion again going to you, a portion going into SARS. But how exactly are they working this out? Well, the secret here, which most members don't really know about, is SARS actually adds the two amounts, which means SARS is not just taking into account what takes place from your cap leave perspective. They're not just working the tax based on cap leave in isolation. What they are doing is they're adding your cap leave to your current package, meaning they're working on tax on the total amount. Now, why is this so alarming? Because most members only get to find this out at the end. They only get to find this out when they know that they've got a certain amount that they should be receiving from tax, from cap leave, and suddenly a huge chunk has been taken away for tax. So you want to put yourself in a position where you can understand this in advance. So again, it makes you make a better decision on whether to retire or resign, knowing that you've taken all the factors into account. So from a salary perspective, because SARS is adding everything together, we're now going to be adding the two amounts. And we'll do this one again together using a calculator. I'll pull it up. So we're adding 350,000. This is the normal salary plus 178,000, which means the total that this person is going to be taxed at, this member, is 528,000. Now I want you to keep this in mind, right? But let's go back onto the iPad so you can get a look at the figures again. And then I'll bring up a tax guide so you understand how this operates. So you'll notice the salary is 350,000. Just keep it in mind. And with the cap leave, it becomes 528. So let's head over to the tax guide so you can see how SARS would view this. Now, please, I need you to know that when you're working the tax on your own, always when it comes to tax, make sure that you're using the latest tax guide. I'm using the guide that was available at the time that I shot this video. So I'm working with the tax guide for 2022. And you can see, again, it's from SARS. Now, the table I want you to pay attention to is this one here. Notice our tax system works on a sliding scale. And you'll see the more income you earn, as you move up the bracket, up in income, your tax is going to increase. So it starts up with 18%, then it's jumping to 26, to 31, to 36. So it's keep going higher and higher. Now notice this particular member's initial income was 350,000. So if you look at this very carefully, 350,000 means this member is taxed inside this bracket, right? Which is at 26%. However, When we start to add in cap leave, and I'll go back there quickly so you can see this again. When we add in cap leave, SARS is not just taking into account cap leave in isolation. They're not just going to work with 178,000 on its own and apply the tax. They are adding both. So it means you now have to focus on an increased income. So for this particular member, it's 528,000. So heading back to the guide, you see the member should have been taxed at this rate, right? Because it's 350,000. Now there's a bump up based on the tax leave, on the cap leave. So when you add that amount, it's 528,000. Now 528,000 pushes this member up 2 tax brackets. So the member was on a 26% tax bracket. The member is now jumping to a 36% tax bracket, up 2 levels, right? What it means is, in essence, if you really think about it and look at it closely, the tax is not only being applied to cap leave, right? It's not just that this member is going to pay a higher rate of tax on cap leave. The member is actually paying a higher rate of tax on the salary as well. So the entire amount is going to be taxed at a higher rate. Let's head back to the iPad so you can see this. So it's 350,000 plus 178, all of it is now taxed at a higher rate, which is a bit of a disadvantage if you think about it, right? Because on the one end, you do not want to lose out on your cap leave, right? You work for that for all this while, and it's something that is rightfully yours and you deserve it. But at the same time, you want to ask yourself the question, of that amount of cap leave, how much is actually coming to you? How much is coming into your pocket? Because if SARS is taking a chunk of this away, then technically you're not benefiting as much as what you would have assumed. Now, in this particular example, the tax for this member worked out to 64,080 rands, which means when you look at it from the cap leave, it's just a portion of it that actually ended up getting paid over to this member, not the full amount. And that's quite a sizable amount of money to lose. Now, when it comes to resigning, you might be concerned that you're going to lose out on the benefit altogether, right? There's a few things you can do to ensure that that doesn't take place. One, you can start to use up some of your cap leave in advance. So you can use it in advance, meaning that once you start to use up the cap leave, you've got less leave left, right? I also guide you on a separate video where I go through 5 different options in which you cannot lose out on cap leave if you have to resign. So there's different techniques that you can put in place in order to use that. But even before you use that technique, what I want to suggest to you is just go back to doing the analysis, right? Because you want to focus on which route is best for you, whether you should be looking at resigning or whether you should be looking at retiring. And cap leave is just one of those points. So you want to start to compare the other elements, as I've shared in other videos. You want to start to look at income. You want to start to pay attention to the lump sum, because usually when you start to have a look at the finer details, then you'll start to see cap leave from another perspective. And I'll share with you very quickly on this video for this particular member, right? If you analyze here what the member's resignation value is, that resignation value sits at 5.1 million. So if we do a quick calculation, I'm pulling up the calculator again, 5.1 million. I'm just rounding up the figures so the math becomes easy here. And I divide that by 3. And the reason I'm dividing by 3 is I want to calculate what the 1/3 value is, right? Which means the member should be entitled to a 1/3 lump sum of 5.1 million. But if we head back onto the statement, you'll notice that the lump sum gratuity here is actually sitting at 1.2 million. So 1,257,000. There's a difference between the two. So if I had to deduct that value, 1,257,000, in this particular member's case, 443,000 is gone. It's not available, right? Meaning if the member had to retire, this member is not getting the full 1/3 value. The member is getting less than 1/3. How much less? 443,000 less. Now, this is where you want to weigh up the difference, right, between the two. Because it's not so clear cut, you don't want to make the decision based on cap leave alone. On this side, if the member had to retire, the member loses out. So minus, it's not 178,000 because you've got to take the tax into account, right? I'll just make the math look easy. Let's say 110,000. So the member loses out 110,000. But if the member had to resign, the member pardon me, if the member has to retire, the member is going to gain this, right? It becomes a plus. This is what the member gains. What the member loses, the negative here, is the member is not going to get 443,000. Because this member is not able to access the full 1/3, right? The lump sum gratuity is less than 1/3. On the flip side, if the member has to resign, the member is losing out 110,000 because the member is not able to get the cap leave, but the member is able to benefit on 443,000. See, because the member is now able to access the true 1/3 value, no longer a proportional amount. So exactly what I've done for you here, when you're working with the decision on whether to retire or resign, it should not be based on one aspect alone. So you don't only want to consider it from the perspective of cap leave and how much of the cap leave is going to come out to you. You want to start to analyze the other details. For example, as I shared with you, what's the lump sum gratuity? You want to look at the monthly income options. You want to start to look at the tax options. You want to look at what would happen if you are not around. So once you have a clear picture of everything, you'll then be in a position to decide which route is most appropriate for you. Good. So on this particular video, I know it's been a bit technical. I encourage you to watch the video again, but on your second watch, take note of the figures. You can pause, punch in your own figures to get the calculations done for yourself, just so that you have some idea as to how this works. If you're needing some assistance in terms of the calculation, or you're unsure on whether you should retire or resign, I encourage you to join the Retire vs. Resign Masterclass that I host so that I can offer you the clarity, or you're welcome to book a private consult and then I'll take you through the details one-on-one. If you have not already done so, I encourage you to subscribe to the video and remember to post comments inside of the chat in this video so that I'm able to get a better understanding as to how the video is helping you, as well if there's any area that you need more clarity on. Perfect. And I shall see you in the next video.